So hi everyone, I'm Layla. I'm a compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day. From the grey sheet, I commit them to my sponsor and I don't eat in between meals no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life today. My abstinence date is the 25th of March, 2020. But I got asked to speak to this meeting and I do just want to share I'm celebrating 7 years today of being clean and sober. And I know it's not my food journey, but I don't know if you can see this or not because I can't share my screen. I don't know if you can see that. Can anyone see the picture? But yeah, I'm just so grateful. I'm I can't describe like the power of 12-step programs. I feel incredibly grateful and I truly believe that if I didn't come into that fellowship, I don't know if I would have found food recovery. Unbeknown to me at the time, my sponsor in that program was in a food fellowship, and that's how I got introduced to food recovery. I didn't know anything about compulsive overeating, even though the only books I ever read growing up were about food addiction, diets, body dysmorphia. I could have diagnosed myself, but my head told me that I was a liar and a cheat, and I just wanted attention and don't ask for help, don't tell anyone what's going on. And yeah, because of grey sheet abstinence, it's introduced me to loads more programs and loads more programs, and I feel like it's just a journey, and I'm just this little baby who's just learning to walk. So I'll try and keep it, what it was like, what I did, and what life is like today. And I don't know about being born an addict or not. I probably from the age of 0 till maybe 11 or 12, I don't know that I had any compulsive tendencies. I can't remember. But I do remember maybe at the age of about 13 or 14, like I remember starting Weight Watchers with my nan because it was suggested that I was a bit overweight. I did have a couple of people at school sort of mock me about the shape of my legs. And I think in early secondary school, about 13 or 14, the notion of starting to diet come to light. And I would ask my mum to buy me, I don't know, the equivalent of like Slim Fast shakes. And I started jogging on the spot in the kitchen. Like this notion of somehow losing weight, I don't know, just there was something that drove me about it. And looking back, when I look back at pictures of my younger self, to be honest, sometimes I just wished I could put my arms around that person because there was nothing wrong with her. But I believed that everything was wrong with her. I wanted my ears pinned back, my nose changed. If I could have changed my whole self, I would have. And, even like Karen, I love it. You said you like the way I could speak, but, I'd looked into when I was younger getting elocution lessons. I must have just had this self-hatred that runs so deep that I kind of wasn't even aware of. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, so from the age of 13 or 14, diets just became a big part of my life. And when I say diets, it felt like even my friends would say to me, you're on a diet every day. But the reality was, I could never actually stick to a diet. I would buy everything, read all the books, invest my life and soul in getting everything in the house or delivered to the house. I went on boot camps, retreats, juice retreats, retreats that were run by like ex-army soldiers where you was up at 5:30 in the morning with a head torch. Every penny I earned went on some form of diet or some way to make my body different. So it just robbed me, it just consumed me, the thought of diets. But could never actually stick to a diet. I'd wake up in the morning and my head would just be like, I wonder how much calories is in that shake or that drink I'm meant to have. I'd be bargaining with myself. As soon as my eyes was open, I'd be bargaining. And then, within an hour, I'd be back eating whatever I swore that I'd never eat again or I wouldn't eat for 6 weeks. I can't remember the amount of time I went to Weight Watchers. I'd start Weight Watchers on a Monday, and then 2 days later, I'd be trying to find a different Weight Watchers, all the way across town because I've eaten all the stuff that I've bought in the Weight Watchers meeting that night. I've been binging for 2 days and I'm desperate. And, even going to Weight Watchers 100 times and it may be only working for me the first time I ever went, which I still think was a bit of a
10
fluke.
minutes left.
Thanks, Fenwa. Anyway, that might give you a bit of a glimpse. I'd walk around multiple shops to get multiple foods, and I'd walk around multiple chemists to get multiple laxatives because I didn't want anyone to ever think that I've had a problem. And all the books I read, I would never keep on a bookshelf. I don't know where I kept them, but I wanted them out of view of like my parents, friends. And when I say books, I mean like the body dysmorphia, the food addiction books. I didn't want people to see those. And yeah, so I come into recovery. I used cocaine from whatever, the age of 16, 17, always used it recreationally. And my life, you know what, my life really and truly, probably up until I was maybe about in my mid 30s, even though I suffered from, what I'm describing now of like food addiction or compulsively eating, I'd use drugs. This is why, people talk about being cunning and baffling. I definitely had areas and moments in my life that were really beautiful. Like I went on holiday, I had friends, but I also spent a lot of time indoors by myself, isolating with the food. And I describe it almost as like living a half life. And a lot of my friends would be out partying and dating, and I would just be at home. And I was perfectly happy at home. The thought, people had this, they describe what is it, the fear of missing out. Like I've got the fear of joining in, like the thought of going out, even now at 43 for like work drinks or engaging with people outside of work. I'm like, no, thank you. I just want to get home in my pajamas. But I'm also trying to get help now to try and change that. It's funny because I'm an overeater, but in a lot of areas of my life, you could say I'm anorexic and avoidant. And I'm only just learning that now, 7 years into recovery. But anyway, so I come into 12 steps because I just had a devastating relationship with cocaine, and that definitely took me down very, very quickly. And like within, I'd say weeks or months of even putting the cocaine down, like it was so obvious to me that the food was a problem. And I think before drugs, it's like I could deny it. I could just tell myself. So my brother was a heroin addict, by the way. And I share that because I couldn't compare personally to me for a long time food being the same as drugs. When I saw my brother, who was an intravenous heroin user, in and out of prison, absolutely battered, skin and bones, where I had quite a nice, comfortable life, even though I was in the food, I just felt like I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't. There's no way food addiction could be the same as drugs. I completely don't believe that now because I've had my own experience with drugs, and food for me is like putting well, I was never a heroin addict, but it's like me taking that first line of cocaine. It's no different. It might take me down a bit slower, but it's just as destructive. Maybe even worse. I'm not sure actually for me. Um, but where was I going? So yeah, I come into food recovery and I found it incredibly tough. Like my drug recovery, I could almost describe it like a walk in the park. Like I'd done service, I had a home group, I went to meetings, but maybe I was just ready, I don't know. Food recovery, it was like I was kicking and screaming, when people, not in this fellowship so much, but it doesn't really matter. But, when I was trying to get abstinent, someone reading a page out of the big book, and obviously I love the big book, that's how I recover, but I just didn't find that helpful. I wanted practical suggestions like, I don't know, and just I found it hard, people talking about the word surrender. It's like, how do I surrender? You know, yeah, and I couldn't believe it when people said like, "Oh, don't leave till the miracle." I just thought people was talking rubbish. I want to swear, but I'm trying not to swear because the meeting's being recorded. But I just thought people were talking out their backsides, and I just didn't get it. People say don't treat it like a diet. How could I not treat it like a diet? I hadn't known anything else, but it's true what they say. Keep coming back, and I kept. Well, I don't know if I did really keep coming back because once I pick up food, I'm not the type of person who's showing up at meetings. I'm just gone. But I kept finding my way back, and I remember my first grey sheet meeting. Again, someone else in the drug program agreed to sponsor me. She took me to my first meeting. She come back to my house, got me my shopping, showed me how to prepare my meals, and I didn't get it straight away. But I remember that meeting, a lady speaking. She told my story. Her eyes were sparkling. That's a God's honest truth. Like she just looked like a picture of health. People was laughing, and I don't remember anything that was well. I say she said my story. I don't really remember much that was said. I just remember the way
5
this
minutes.
woman looked. Thanks, Femma acknowledged. Anyway, that's what happened. I didn't get it straight away, but eventually, and things maybe didn't even get that bad. Things were bad and then they get better. That's how it was with my food. When I was in it, it was bad. Then I might have a day or two reprieve and then it gets shit again. But anyway, something must have changed for me. And I think maybe it was a surrender just inside. Something just said, you know what, just give it a go. It wasn't a big deal. I wasn't even in a really dark place, but I think I just had a day of binging and I just thought, you know what, why don't I just try it for an hour for a day, you know? And I reached out to someone who had sacked me as my sponsor, but she agreed to take me on again. And that day, it was in the evening. I went and got my food shopping. I must have had my first abstinent meal. And, I never dreamt in my wildest dreams. I didn't think it was possible to get an hour abstinent. Here I am, please God, on the 25th of March, I'll be celebrating. Hopefully, I don't want to jinx it 6 years. And it's like, the same with the drugs. I just don't know how this happens. Well, I do know how it happens because the model of recovery that was shown to me is that I come to meetings, a minimum of 3 meetings a week. I'm back doing 30 and 30 at the moment because I'm just started working another program. And I hate that, when my sponsor's suggesting to me in another program, are you going to will in any lengths? I feel like telling her to like F off, like I don't like to hear that stuff, but the reality is I'm either working to stay clean and sober and not eat, or working to stay away from destructive relationships. I'm either working on my recovery or I'm working towards a binge. That's just how I see it today. And I don't work a consistent program. I've probably spoke to more people in the last 3 weeks on outreach than I have done in 6 months because I'm desperate, because I'm trying to save my life again in another area. And but I do show up in GreySheet. I've got my home group. I do service on a Monday night. I've picked a service commitment now where I actually have to be there because I like to be the booker because I know I don't have to attend. Any loopholes, like loophole Layla, I'm at, don't want to get to meetings. But anyway, I do. I just do it, not because I enjoy it, but because I love being abstinent. I love my life today, whether it's I don't know, good, bad, or ugly. There's light in every corner of my life today. In sadness and darkness, there's still light. And my food is better than any binge, and I mean that. I've learnt to cook in the grey sheet. And what else? I've only got like I think a minute or two left, so I want to just maybe say what life's like today. Yeah, just incredibly beautiful, and it's hard. Life can be hard. I actually feel like since I've come into recovery, life is harder in a way without a drink and a drug and the food. And I have had a lot of challenges. My brother died, my dad's been in intensive care, my mum's been in and out of hospital. I've got to have knee replacement surgery at some point. I had a steroid injection yesterday. I've changed jobs, broken bones, dated, not dated, been in abusive relationships. I've just had to face life on life terms. But what you have all taught me is I don't have to eat under any circumstance. And that is my absolute experience. Last year, traveled solo. I went sailing in Thailand. I looked like a drug addict. I had all these little blue bags filled with like, the sawdust stuff. I had everything, more food than clothes probably. But it was, I went to Italy. I went to the Connecticut retreat. I visited my sponsor in Boston. I've done so much last year. This year I just plan to get out debt. I'll be debt free by the end of the year. And all these things I can do because I'm in grey sheet. I can be kind and loving to my mum today, not all the time, but probably a lot more than I've ever been because of the grey sheet. Thanks, Ifenwa. Um, and yeah, I just love my life. I love being indoors. I love having a clean home. I love the way my fridge looks. I love going shopping for my grey sheet food. I love how my food looks on my plate. And yeah, I'm just, grateful for whatever they say, like the layer for the onions. And I just finish on this. Someone shared to me today about, she said it's like being in a hallway, and you're trying to get to the other end of the hallway. And I can't actually remember what else she shared, but when she shared it, I just thought, what a beautiful sentiment. The hallway might seem long, but I'll get there. And at times it might seem lonely. But I'll pick up the phone instead of eating, or I'll pick up the phone instead of picking the phone up to someone I shouldn't, or I can still engage in very destructive, behaviours even now in grey sheet. But thank God there is help out there, and I don't eat no matter what.